Rian Johnson has just made it 3 for 3 with his Knives Out franchise, sparking major success with Wake Up Dead Man, arguably the best installment to date. The key to Johnson's success here relies on a mastery of blending blockbuster entertainment fun with complex, meaningful storytelling, spurred by a deep, passionate understanding of the mystery whodunit genre as a whole. So what does this mastery of the whodunit entail? In essence, one of the defining aspects of a detective fiction story is something Rian Johnson spoke about 3 years ago during the release of Glass Onion.
As a writer, you always have to keep yourself aware that the detective is not the protagonist of the movie.
3 years ago, when Glass Onion came out, I made a video talking about this point in particular, and how Knives Out's writing compares to the detective fiction legends that it outwardly pays homage to, particularly Agatha Christie, which Johnson loves, but also others like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes and the world's first ever fictional detective, Edgar Allan Poe's C. Auguste Dupin. In Wake Up Dead Man, Johnson continues to express his undying love to the genre and to these greats, explicitly name-checking some of Christie's novels, Poe's Murders in the Rue Morgue, and John Dixon Carr's The Hollow Man, the story and author that popularized locked door mysteries. These references only serve to reiterate how much Johnson loves to abide by these legendary authors' contributions to the genre, most notably with the aforementioned "the detective is not the protagonist" situation. However, what Rian does in this movie brings a little bit of innovation into the classic formula. He introduces an interesting twist, where he bridges the gap between the formulaicness of the whodunit genre and the relatability and dynamism of just telling a plain good human story. He does this by more intimately connecting Benoit Blanc to the story, but not in the direct way we'd expect, and by having him undergo a journey throughout that ties him to our actual protagonist, Father Judd, in a very meaningful way. But before we delve into this interesting twist, let's talk about our protagonist without delving into spoilers. More clearly than ever, in this movie, there is a defined protagonist, Father Judd. Abiding by the tried and tested rules of whodunits, Johnson introduces us to the story first, the suspects, and the dynamics. And the detective only comes in once the crime has taken place. This time, Benoit takes more time than ever before to actually make his appearance. Despite that, the first act of the movie is still incredibly gripping. Our actual protagonist, Father Judd, is a very interesting, sympathetic character to follow, and the movie's setup, which involves Judd struggling to change the strangely extreme ways of a fellow priest in a new remote church, is told in a very captivating way that has us constantly formulating questions and meeting interesting characters. This first act is done so well that it makes you both thirst for and dread the inevitable crime. The introduction basically feels powerful enough to be a story on its own, and a very interesting one at that. Despite its tardiness, at no point did I personally miss out on Benoit Blanc or want him to show up sooner. No, the tale of Judd's challenges at this new church was so good as a story overall and so well told that I was fully invested in it as is, with or without Blanc. Rian actually talks about the risks of introducing Benoit so late and his anxiety towards the situation in an interview for RogerEbert.com. In essence, he cites his literary inspiration as basically what gave him the confidence to pull this off, in addition to the necessity of keeping a tight and compelling first act to make the storytelling truly work. And that's exactly what he did. Johnson's expertise with the whodunit and him following all its rules basically combines with his increased experience with storytelling as a whole, allowing him to present a very interesting story as is, not one that becomes truly interesting after the crime. That, along with his passion for the story being told, drawing inspiration from his own experiences with religion, allowed him to tell a truly moving human story, even without the overlaid aspect of the murder mystery genre's narrative expectations. Rian never lost sight of that powerful story about faith, belief, and love, but kept it squarely in his line of sight while also telling a complex, twisty, fun, and exciting murder mystery. As for the interesting twist that I mentioned before in regards to the detective is not the protagonist formula, While in the past 2 movies we've only gotten snippets of Blanc's backstory and rarely focused on him outside his investment in the crime as an intellectual puzzle, in Wake Up Dead Man, Blanc is more invested than ever. He's still not the protagonist, but he could very well be the deuteragonist, the person second in importance to the protagonist. And that's because his worldview and perspective on religion clashes greatly with that of Father Judd, and yet they still ally together to try to get to the bottom of the crime. And through that budding companionship, we come to see Benoit develop as a character in a way he didn't in the previous films. It expands past his interest in complex crimes. He learns something and achieves some active change by the end of the movie, going on a character arc while unraveling the mystery. This added depth to Blanc only increases the emotional resonance of this movie's narrative. In essence, the added emotion and relatability for Blanc simply makes it a better story, without forcing it to betray its adherence to the principles of the detective fiction genre. I think this balance of storytelling-focused writing, combined with loyalty to the genre, is basically why people are saying that Rian is kind of reinventing the whodunit for the modern age. Okay, so Rian understands whodunits, and he knows how to tell a good story. However, these 2 factors don't necessarily always lead to a highly profitable blockbuster movie. Big commercial successes don't need to have good stories, they just need to be fun and accessible, like Cameron's Avatar, for instance. And original IP stuff with good stories are more often than not making big commercial success, and that's if they make any money at all. This is kind of a huge issue with the world of movie production these days. Only a select few filmmakers possess both artistic power and immense commercial appeal. People like Christopher Nolan, for instance. So how does Rian Johnson do it too? Rian basically maintains a focus on big picture entertainment all throughout his storytelling process.
For me, these movies first and foremost are entertainments that you can kind of go with the whole family, from the kids to the grandparents together.
That's the point here. Johnson focuses on still giving audiences something they enjoy. It's a skill he's mastered over years of making films, even if those years were bumpy in some spots. His close friend and associate, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, explains it as, his respect for the audience is a big part of why he's able to make these movies that strike a balance between his deeply sophisticated taste and mainstream popcorn movies. To me, it feels like Johnson has built audience entertainment into a core part of his creative artistic process. To him, pleasing audiences goes hand in hand with expressing his artistic views. It's an interesting perspective, and one that has gotten him 3 consecutive successes in a movie franchise, a rare accomplishment. This is why Johnson always makes these movies have big ensemble casts. This is why he always makes sure to include a ton of humor, and why he focuses on fun and action and a modern pace. These movies are spectacles. They're massively entertaining. But the best part is that Rian does all of this without sacrificing storytelling. And he always chooses to tell these stories within the context of our modern climate, kind of dating the film as opposed to giving it a vague, timeless quality. He makes movies for the current age, both in style and in content, and that has great merit. Wake Up Dead Man tells a deeply touching story about faith and religion while showcasing the painful ways some people can use it to pull apart from one another and create division as opposed to unity. It's a story with a timeless theme, but one that is as relevant as ever today, especially in the specific way presented. This is why Rian Johnson is doing so well. He's really learned how to blend artistic vision through complex, meaningful stories with fun, large-scale spectacle. He's achieved what he's always wanted to, which is to give people the experience he's had growing up with cinema.
Those are my memories, of sitting and laughing my butt off with my whole family. And so I hope you get a good crowd, and please try and go see it in the theater.
Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of Wake Up Dead Man in the comments below, and let me know what you think of the Rian Johnson formula overall. If you haven't seen the movie yet, I highly recommend it. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.